PayPal is no ordinary company, and this is no ordinary story. On the one hand, this is one of the most inspiring tales you'll ever hear. How a small group of people in their 20s with no real finance experience went up against big banking and revolutionized the way we send money. But there's also a very dark story here. How a company that promised so much has ended up ripping off its own users and being involved in countless scandals. There are very few companies with as many horror stories and unhappy customers as PayPal. This is also a story about how PayPal faced fraudsters, gave away free money, nearly went bankrupt, and on multiple occasions hatched a secret plot to overthrow their own CEO. And yet, despite all of this controversy surrounding the company, hundreds of millions of people use PayPal every day to send money around the world. And the team behind PayPal have come to be known as the PayPal Mafia, a network of powerful billionaires who are behind so many other huge internet companies, which means there's an extreme amount of power in the hands of a very small group. So, it's time we delve into the truth. Welcome to the insane true story of PayPal. Max Levchin was only 10 years old when the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. He was in his house sleeping just 90 miles away. And as a Jewish family living in Soviet Russia, life was hard for the Levchins. So when the Russian economy started to decline in the late 80s, Max's family feared the worst and emigrated to the United States in 1991. In the early 90s, Max became fascinated with a gift he received, an early computer system. Max taught himself how to write and develop programs for it. And throughout college, Max explored ways to use the internet to improve his own life and the life of those around him. Together with some friends, Max wrote and sold 2 separate computer programs, and in 1998, using the money he made, Max moved to Palo Alto in California. Max was hoping to build his own internet company, and this was quickly becoming the hub for young, tech-minded people wanting to capitalize on the dot-com revolution. But one day, whilst trying to escape the intense California heat, Max attended a lecture so he could have a nap in the air-conditioned lecture hall. Except, instead of getting some sleep, Max was riveted by the lecturer, a guy called Peter Thiel. Peter was already moderately successful in several fields. He was a startup founder, a hedge fund manager, and now an investor in tech startups. So after the lecture, Max cornered Peter and explained that he wanted to build a tech company. Peter's eyes lit up. The two of them arranged to meet for breakfast the very next day to discuss Max's ideas. During the breakfast, Max talked while Peter listened politely, but then Max started talking about writing programs for the Palm Pilot, which was the first popular handheld computer. It seems very primitive now, but at the time, there was a lot of excitement around this little device that could store your contacts, notes, and calendar. Max explained how creating new applications for Palm Pilots was an untapped market, and that was exactly what Peter wanted to hear. Peter believed in Max's technical skills and funded his first idea for $100,000 in 1998. Using Peter's money, Max founded a company called FieldLink, which would offer security for these Palm Pilot devices. Peter and Max both had big dreams for this business. However, they soon realized that their idea was completely flawed. The market for mobile security didn't exist yet. There were simply not enough customers. Not just that, but they soon realized Palm Pilot's parent company had already partnered with another business for their security needs. FieldLink had to change its business strategy immediately. But Max and Peter were still both convinced that mobile computer devices like this were the future. So they began to consider what else they could develop for the Palm Pilot. They wondered, what if you could use the Palm Pilot to send and receive money? And thus, they decided to launch a mobile wallet for Palm Pilot that would allow users to send money to each other using the device's infrared ports. Infrared ports allowed wireless transfer of data between 2 devices within a 10-meter range. And at a time where most people still relied on cash and checks, the idea of beaming money to each other sounded impressive. So now that they had this new idea, FieldLink changed its company name to Confinity, a mixture of confidence and infinity. As for their money beaming program, they came up with a bunch of name ideas: eMoneyBeam, Zappio, Moomoo, Cache, but they eventually settled on PayPal, which had a nice alliteration to it and could easily be used as a verb, like saying, just PayPal me. So with the business idea and name both sorted out, Peter and Max started recruiting. although most of their hires were people they knew from college. The average age of their employees was just 25. But this camaraderie would later prove crucial to PayPal's success. Peter also knew that investment would be critical for a young startup like Infinity to sustain itself in the initial years. Fortunately, the dot-com boom was at its peak, and there was no shortage of cash in Silicon Valley. With a better business plan, Nokia Ventures agreed to invest $4.5 million into their money-beaming idea. This investment allowed them to hire more people and set up a proper office. But Peter also realized it was a great opportunity to generate media headlines. So rather than Nokia just transferring their investment to Confinity's bank account, they staged a publicity event where in front of the press, Nokia would wirelessly beam the money onto Peter's Palm Pilot. Not only would this make a great news story, it would show the world the potential of Confinity's idea. The plan was good in theory, but the reality was the technology was still unpredictable. The infrared transmitter was notoriously buggy and unreliable. So just days before the event, Max and the team pulled all-nighters to code and repair the 2 Palm Pilots that would be used during the announcement. If this payment failed, people would completely lose confidence in the concept before they'd even started. But thankfully, the money transfer worked. And it seemed people loved the idea. Well, except for one man. Sitting in his office, this man watched the news story about Palm Pilot money transfers and said, "That's a dumb idea. They're doomed." And that man was Elon Musk. Guys, before we get to the next chapter, I have some very exciting news for you. For a while now, I've been getting a lot of questions, such as, how are Magnates Media videos made? How do you edit like this, or hire an editor who edits like this? How do you write the videos? How has the channel grown so quickly? How do you get huge sponsors? And what does the behind the scenes of Magnates Media even look like? Well, if you've been curious about anything like that, everything is now being revealed. At long last, I'm pleased to announce my full YouTube system is now available. You're going to be able to access everything I know about building a hugely profitable business with YouTube. Literally everything I've spent years learning, all laid out in an easy to follow system. That way, you can create your own documentary style channel like I have, and get paid to make videos about whatever topics you find interesting. I chose business stories because I like researching them, but this system will work for making videos about whatever you want. I lay out everything for you step by step, so you can make your own epic videos, build a huge audience, and get paid to make content you enjoy. Seriously, how insane is that? You can make so much money by making cool videos about whatever you're interested in, and you can do it from anywhere in the world with no boss and complete freedom. Because the beauty with YouTube is that once you know how to make great videos and you have a library of content that people can go back and watch, those videos can be earning you passive income for years to come. Imagine making tens of thousands of dollars per month from videos you made over a year ago. But obviously, the sooner you start, the better. So if you want to learn how you can make videos like this and build your own hugely successful YouTube channel, just click my course link in the description below. I'm certain you're going to love it, so just scroll to the description now and click the course link. I'll see you there. It was 1999 and Elon Musk had just sold his first internet company called Zip2, earning him a personal payout of around $22 million at just 27 years old. But to Elon, this just meant he now had more money to invest in a new business that was much more ambitious. He wanted to overhaul the entire financial system. You see, before starting his own business, Elon had interned at a bank and had witnessed firsthand how little banks seemed to be innovating. Banks were tied up with expensive, outdated systems that made transactions extremely slow. Most people still relied on sending checks by mail, which was extremely slow and inconvenient. But Elon felt the internet was going to enable all of that to change. And since the banks didn't seem to be doing it, he'd do it himself. Elon saw a future in which all of our financial needs were met by one single platform. He wanted to build a company that would offer savings and checking accounts, loans, insurance, mortgages, lines of credit, mutual funds, and even stock trading, all in one place and all connected to the internet. And thus, Elon named his new business X.com, as he felt this encompassed the idea of a digital superbank that would do everything. Elon then invested the majority of his Zip2 money into this new company. This was very uncommon in Silicon Valley, where most entrepreneurs rely on investors. But after being sidelined by investors in his previous business, Elon was determined to keep full control this time around. And putting his own money in also had a positive effect, as it showed everyone just how much Elon believed in the idea. But despite the hype and plans to change the world, X.com looked like it might be dead before it had even begun. Many believed integrating every financial service under one company would be a regulatory nightmare. In fact, it was actually illegal. At the time, there was the Glass-Steagall Act, which banned the merging of retail banking and investment banking. However, Elon believed he could ignore these restrictions and regulations for the time being. He told his team, "We shouldn't be afraid to break a few eggs along the way." Elon would end up firing most of the original executives on the team who didn't think his vision was possible. Elon then hired Bill Harris as CEO, as he'd been the former CEO of a successful financial software company. He also began expanding his software development team, and soon enough, the X.com product began to take shape. X struck a deal with Barclays Bank that allowed its customers to invest in mutual funds. Another agreement with a community bank meant X.com could now issue checks and print its own debit cards. And this meant if you had an X account with money in it, you could withdraw cash at an ATM. And thus, the X.com website finally went live on November 25th, 1999. Because of all the regulatory issues and red tape, it was nowhere near the all-in-one financial services hub that Elon was envisioning, but it was a start. However, in 1999, X.com was renting a small office suite at 394 University Avenue in Palo Alto, overlooking a bakery. And in a crazy coincidence, Confinity was occupying the adjoining office suite. These two companies, both looking to revolutionize online payments, were literally neighbors. Employees from both companies saw each other all the time. They often bumped into each other at the entrance to the building or in the restrooms and parking lot. And just like Confinity's PayPal app, X was also planning on letting users instantly transfer money to other users. Although it's important to note, this was just a tiny fraction of what Elon had planned for his company. What's really interesting though, is that at first, these two companies didn't even think of each other as competitors. Confinity was developing their PayPal app for Palm Pilots, and X.com was trying to become a digital superbank offering different financial services. It seemed they were on very different paths. And secretly, both companies thought their neighbors were on the completely wrong path. Max and Peter were convinced Elon's vision for X would face way too much regulation, whilst Elon felt money beaming on Palm Pilots was a dumb idea. So neither company could imagine that in just a few months, they would be bitter rivals trying to crush each other. The news story about beaming money from one Palm Pilot to another was exciting, but the publicity didn't get that many people actually using PayPal. There were obvious flaws with the idea, like what if you left your device at home? And not just that, the majority of people didn't even have Palm Pilots. So in a late night brainstorm to try and solve these problems, Max casually threw out an idea. What if on the PayPal website, you could also send money to someone's email address? In his mind, this was nothing more than a temporary solution until they found a better option. Certainly nobody thought this would be a core feature. It was simply meant to be a safeguard for people who forgot their Palm Pilots at home. But then something interesting happened. Within a few weeks, everyone was using the PayPal email feature much more than their Palm Pilot system. Because anybody could sign up to send and receive money using just their email address, no specific device was needed. And that same year, more Americans chose to send emails than actual letters. And so it soon became clear that sending money via email, rather than using Palm Pilots, was actually way more useful and popular. PayPal could ride the wave of people adopting email. So what had intended to just be a backup plan was actually an instant hit with consumers. PayPal began gaining thousands of users, and this led the team to realize they needed to focus purely on email payments, not Palm Pilots. However, in another crazy coincidence, at almost the exact same time, in the same building, and facing the same problem of acquiring more users, Elon Musk and X.com were coming to a very similar conclusion. Elon Musk was not remotely excited by email payments. He said, "It's trivial to do a money transfer. It's literally moving numbers in a database. It's super dumb. My kid made one and he's 12. And yet, Elon would tell people about all the other financial services X.com was working on, but it was always the simple email payment part that everyone seemed interested in, which was the easiest part of what they did. And so, just like the PayPal team, Elon had not set out to focus on email payments. It was meant to just be a small side benefit, but the market clearly preferred this to any of their other features. And so, X.com also began to focus more on sending and receiving payments via email. And thus in late 1999, these two companies in neighboring offices, each with a very different original business plan, had accidentally stumbled into offering the same service, sending and receiving payments via email. And this would begin a bloodthirsty battle that would change banking and the internet forever. Both companies knew the online payments market would only have one ultimate winner, because they both understood one of Silicon Valley's most prominent principles, the network effect. The more people in a network, the more valuable that network is. Everyone wants to use the most popular network, as that's the one where you can connect with the most people. So both companies were willing to throw money at customers in a race to build the largest payment network. The battle was on, and customer growth became the #1 priority for both PayPal and X.com. To get more customers, both companies offered a version of the same incentive: refer your friends and we'll literally give you free money. PayPal offered $10 if you signed up, and an extra $10 if someone you referred also signed up. So X.com went one better, offering $20 per new sign up, plus $10 for the referral. Handing out free money like this was an interesting tactic to get customers. Or as Elon later said, it was a race to see who would run out of money last. Both companies' chief financial officers were initially horrified by this plan. Surely it was a bad sign if they had to pay customers to sign up rather than customers paying them. But of course, paying people to join and then paying them for referring others was a very effective way to get a lot of users quickly. Because by rewarding both the person making the referral and the friend they were signing up, it became a truly viral marketing campaign for both companies. However, although both companies saw an increase in users from this, they still both needed a clearer use case, instead of people just using the service to get the free cash bonus. And little did they know that their services had already become popular with an unexpected user base: the auction website eBay.com. By 2000, eBay was a billion-dollar company with tens of millions of users, and eBay's auction model allowed sellers to create listings of items that buyers could bid on. But initially, eBay didn't have a robust payment service built into its platform, and so to complete transactions, buyers and sellers often used cash, money orders, checks, and wire transfers. So PayPal and X.com's email payment services were incredible for eBay users, as it made it so much easier and faster to handle payments. All eBay sellers had to do was create an account on either PayPal or X.com and mention in their auction listings that they take payments via these services. And back then, neither PayPal or X even charged any transaction fee. In fact, the opposite. Both companies paid new users for signing up and for referring others. So eBay sellers realized if they referred buyers to PayPal or X, they'd make even more money on every item they sold. It was win-win, and so thousands of eBay users started using PayPal or X.com. By late January 2000, PayPal had more than 100,000 users on its platform, and X.com wasn't far behind. This soon became 200,000 users, and it was clear the battleground had shifted to the eBay marketplace. Once again, neither company had planned that eBay users would be such a big part of their business, and initially neither company had done any advertising to attract eBay customers. eBay users had simply adopted PayPal and X.com themselves because it made sense. But once both PayPal and X realized this demand, it allowed both companies to tap into an existing network where there was a clear use case for their email payment services. And thus, both companies went all in on marketing to eBay users. PayPal created tools and tutorials to help people offer PayPal on their auctions, and days after PayPal started chasing eBay users, X did the same thing. Whenever one of them tried to offer a new feature, the other would always try to quickly copy or improve upon it, both trying to one-up each other in the race to become eBay's #1 payment service. The rivalry began to intensify. The PayPal team brought out a cake with the words "Die X.com" written in frosting, whilst Elon personally sent emails to his team about the need to kill PayPal. Both companies worked tirelessly during this period, literally sleeping under their desks. Everyone was exhausted and being pushed to their limits, but they were also excited to be building something they believed in. However, whilst it may seem that PayPal and X.com were on an incredible growth trajectory, their balance sheets told a very unpleasant story. Because of the sign-up and referral bonuses, along with the lack of any real revenue model, both companies were losing money at a rapid pace. The more users who joined, the more money they lost. For example, PayPal had to pay a 2% fee on every credit card transaction, and was bleeding almost $100,000 every day. To make matters worse, PayPal had promised users its basic service would remain free forever, because their plan was to make money from selling business accounts with extra features. But that would be a long, slow process to eventually recoup all the money they were spending to get customers, and PayPal was starting to worry they'd run out of cash before that happened. And if PayPal backtracked and started charging users now, they worried everyone would just use X.com instead. Meanwhile, right next door, X.com was facing the exact same issues. Elon's strategy was a little different. He was happy to provide the email payment system at a loss indefinitely, believing that customers would also use X.com's other financial services, like the checking accounts and brokerage, where the fees were profitable. But the reality was, users just didn't seem that interested in these other features, as they could already get those from their traditional banks, which they trusted more. So, both companies continued to lose more and more money as they raced to get more eBay users for their unprofitable email payment services. PayPal had a small lead in terms of users, but Peter and Max were extremely nervous. They could see X.com catching up to PayPal and knew that X had more funding. To ensure PayPal didn't go bankrupt, they needed to do something drastic to survive. And thus, one day, Peter Thiel walked to the office next door to have a secret meeting with Elon Musk. Elon was confident that X.com would emerge victorious in this battle. He had more money than PayPal and could raise more if needed, so in his mind, there was no way X.com would end up on the losing side. But Bill Harris, who was X.com's CEO, didn't share Elon's optimism. He thought both companies were spiraling towards mutual destruction. In Bill's view, the online payment market was only big enough for one player, and so he felt the two companies would be much better off by merging together. And thus a meeting was arranged with the two most influential people from both companies, Max Levchin and Peter Thiel from the Confinity team, who were building PayPal, and Elon Musk and Bill Harris from X.com. Despite being fierce rivals, everyone could see the logic of having one dominant payment company instead of two competing companies. However, it's fair to say Elon was not particularly on board with the idea of a merger. He believed that X.com would crush PayPal eventually, and that merging wasn't necessary. But Bill persuaded Elon to at least explore the idea. The mood in the meeting was tense, and it soon got worse. Elon's first offer was that X should acquire PayPal, and that the PayPal team would receive just 8% of the combined value of the companies. This extremely lowball offer shocked Peter and Max, who left the meeting almost immediately. It seemed like the deal was a lost cause, and so the PayPal team pushed harder than ever to gain more users, which of course sent them closer and closer to bankruptcy. But as PayPal's users grew, the acquisition offers from X.com kept increasing. After some further negotiations, Elon eventually agreed to come down to a 55-45 split, which PayPal felt was much fairer. In fact, they were literally ready to agree to the merger, and then the big egos on both sides of the deal almost killed it. Elon made a comment to Max about how he was getting a steal, implying their deal was much better for PayPal. Max was furious by this and left. Max then argued that the only way this merger could work is if they became genuine partners, which meant an even 50-50 split instead. Elon was ready to back out of the deal completely because of this, and continue their brutal fight. But then X's CEO, Bill Harris, dropped a bombshell. He told Elon that if X didn't merge with PayPal, he'd resign. Bill believed it was unclear which side would win, and it'd take a huge amount of time and resources to figure it out, so merging the two companies was the only thing that made sense. And thus, Bill was giving Elon an ultimatum. But given X.com was right in the middle of a funding round, having their CEO leave right now would look disastrous for the company. So feeling like he had no choice, Elon agreed to the 50-50 terms, and in February 2000, the two companies officially merged together. The company kept the name X.com, which Elon loved, but it kept Confinity's PayPal name for their email payment system, as users had become attached to that. Elon, the largest shareholder, took the role of chairman, whilst Bill retained his position as CEO. Peter Thiel was made senior vice president of finance and was responsible for finding investors, and Max continued his role as CTO. The battle for the eBay marketplace seemed like it was finally over. Thanks to the merger, they could make a powerful pitch to investors. One united payment company that no longer had any major competition. By combining their user bases, they could go on to dominate the entire online payments market. Because instead of competing with each other for customers, they could now focus on other serious issues, like generating revenue and reducing operating costs. And so at first, it seemed everything had worked out perfectly. PayPal continued to attract 12,000 new users per day, and Peter even secured a record $100 million in funding just in time before the dot-com bubble burst and many other internet companies went bankrupt. With $100 million in the bank and a growing customer base of 1 million PayPal users by the end of March 2000, it seemed like the company's future looked very bright. However, the actual reality was very different. Under the surface, several even bigger problems were bubbling up. Firstly, actually merging their systems together was not going to be straightforward. X.com and Confinity had entirely different user bases and websites, whilst X had been built on Microsoft Windows and Confinity's PayPal was built on Linux. Not just that, but internally at the company, the merger meant the business now had duplicates in some roles. Like both X and Confinity had someone who oversaw finance. But now that they'd merged, two people were effectively doing the same job. PayPal was also receiving thousands of customer service calls a day, which it simply couldn't handle. At one point, they literally just unhooked the phone lines, although this resulted in someone thinking PayPal was keeping their money hostage. So he showed up at the PayPal office with a gun to demand his money. After the merger, the company also became much slower and less efficient, with decisions taking way longer, and many employees being unsure who they were even meant to report to. It didn't help that the two companies had been such fierce rivals, and now everyone was supposed to get along as one happy family. The reality was the PayPal side and the X.com side still felt separated, even though they were officially on the same team now. And it wasn't long before cracks began to appear in the relationship between X.com executives. For example, Peter wasn't impressed with some of Bill's decisions as CEO. Bill was keen to end the referral bonus and start charging customers for using PayPal, even though they'd always promised to be a free service. But Peter disagreed, and also disliked that Bill seemed to be introducing more meetings and formality within the company. Eventually, Peter Thiel resigned. Peter's resignation sent a shockwave through the organization, and it was soon clear that Peter wasn't the only one who had issues with Bill's leadership. Both Elon and Max had a lot of concerns about how slowly new features were being rolled out after the merger. Elon in particular felt Bill was focusing too much on PayPal and not on his bigger X.com vision. He also felt Bill was hiring too many executives from traditional finance, the same kind of people who worked at the banks Elon wanted to disrupt. But perhaps most importantly, Elon had never forgiven Bill for the ultimatum that had forced this merger in the first place. All of this, along with Peter's departure, meant that Elon Musk, Max Levchin, and a couple of other high-ranking executives had all come to the same conclusion. They needed to overthrow Bill as CEO. Behind Bill's back, the rebels secretly conspired to go to the board with an ultimatum. Either remove Bill as CEO, or we're all resigning. Since Elon and Max both had board seats of their own, they only had a few other board members to convince. And so, before Bill could do anything about it, he was forced to step down as leader. In May 2000, after a successful coup, Peter Thiel returned as chairman, and Elon Musk retook the title of CEO. But before we get to the next chapter, it's time to answer a question I get a lot. How can you make your own YouTube videos if you don't have time to edit them or hire any help? Well, you're gonna wanna know about today's sponsor, InVideo. InVideo AI helps you create and edit videos using simple text prompts. And the AI does the heavy lifting, so anyone can bring their ideas to life. Basically, you're the director, and the AI is like your video assistant to help make it happen. All you have to do is start with a simple text prompt, and it creates the first rough draft for you. And then you can get creative and fine-tune it with any changes you want. And the best part, you can try InVideo AI for free. And if you're serious about video creation and want the paid plan, you'll get the ability to clone your own voice and access to millions of royalty-free video clips that will cost you huge amounts if you source them individually. So this can save you a lot of time and money. Just go to the link in the description and use my code to get twice the number of video generation credits in your first month. So click the link below, and then let's get back to the story. With Bill gone, Peter back in the mix, and Elon calling the shots, it finally seemed like the internal battles had been settled and PayPal could continue expanding. However, keeping PayPal free forever wasn't going to work, as it cost PayPal millions in credit card transaction fees to process payments. And so in the summer of 2000, they introduced paid business and premier accounts, which offered more features than the standard free accounts. In exchange for a 1.9% transaction fee, you could get benefits like a dedicated 24-hour customer service hotline and automatic balance withdrawals to your bank account. A week after the launch of their premium services, PayPal had more than 9,000 premium customers. For the first time in PayPal's history, they were generating a small amount of revenue. But then suddenly, a new enemy appeared that threatened PayPal's entire existence: eBay. You see, at first, eBay had been fine with PayPal since they were making payments easier, which meant more people were using eBay. But by the end of 2000, half of all eBay listings had PayPal as their preferred payment option. And eBay had realized they were missing out on a lot of money by not handling all those payments themselves directly. PayPal was essentially running the cash register on eBay's store. eBay had already bought their own payment system called BillPoint. And even though payments wasn't eBay's main business, they felt like every sale that went through PayPal stole a little bit of income from them. So throughout the year, eBay began trying everything they could to get its users to switch to BillPoint instead of PayPal. Firstly, eBay restricted logo sizes on listings, making the PayPal logo hard to find in a user's description. But PayPal responded by designing tools to help its users resize their logos and stay within the guidelines. Next, eBay automatically enrolled new auctions into the BillPoint system, meaning that unless you found the obscure opt-out button, you had to use BillPoint as a payment option for your auction. In response, PayPal publicly posted eBay's customer service number, encouraging users to phone eBay directly to complain. And sure enough, after getting flooded with calls, eBay removed the feature. But the battle between eBay's BillPoint and PayPal only intensified further. One major threat to PayPal was when eBay introduced the Buy It Now feature that allowed a user to skip the auction process and buy the item at a fixed price immediately. In reality, this was a ploy to funnel customers to BillPoint, which was the default payment service when a user pressed Buy It Now, cutting out the part where you would normally agree a payment method with the seller. This tactic succeeded, and BillPoint's users quickly grew from 10% to 20%. But PayPal had victories elsewhere. They built more tools designed for eBay users, like a feature that auto-completed the eBay payment page with PayPal selected as the payment option. PayPal also started offering 1.5% cashback to sellers using debit cards if they made PayPal the only payment service on their auctions. Of course, this just ramped up tensions further. eBay then responded by directly emailing their users to explain the ways BillPoint was better than PayPal, including how BillPoint was officially owned and endorsed by eBay. They also partnered with Visa and said there'd be no fees on Visa transactions done through BillPoint. And they even renamed BillPoint to eBay Payments to make it sound more official. But despite all the tactics eBay tried, it was still no match for PayPal's free service, which people had come to love. PayPal was still the most preferred payment service on eBay by far, and PayPal had now gone international and allowed users from around the world to open accounts. And so as the year 2000 ended, PayPal had processed $1 billion in transactions in total since its inception. Their Q4 report showed $7.4 million in revenue, a big increase from the previous quarter of just $1 million in revenue. Having said that, PayPal was still nowhere near being actually profitable. Plus, PayPal was still fearful that in theory, eBay could completely ban PayPal from its site, which would essentially kill PayPal's entire business. So, in order to try and become less reliant on eBay, they introduced PayPal Shops, an online directory where sellers could post their websites free of charge for buyers to see, encouraging users to do business outside eBay. PayPal also introduced buttons anyone could easily add to their own personal website to accept payments. But this just made eBay even more angry, as PayPal was giving people a way to sell their items online that cut eBay out completely. PayPal increased the tensions further when their team invaded an eBay event and distributed thousands of PayPal t-shirts to attendees. By June 2001, 70% of all eBay sellers were using PayPal, while only 25% were using eBay's own payment service. eBay had to accept they just couldn't innovate as quickly, because ultimately, payments was only a small part of eBay's business, whereas it was PayPal's entire focus. Not just that, but eBay took a more traditional approach to its payment system, like requiring a more in-depth verification process. Unlike PayPal, who were handing out accounts and cash to literally anyone, this would soon cause huge problems. But in the short term, it meant PayPal had less friction and was easier to use, and built up a bigger network faster. And thus, PayPal ultimately beat eBay when it came to payments. And as the CEO, Elon Musk must have been thinking that after winning this battle, finally, things would be a little steadier for the company. Maybe he could now start expanding X.com more with the other financial services like he'd always wanted. But little did he know, within PayPal, whispers were going on behind the scenes. And very soon, he'd be kicked out of the company entirely. Part of the reason PayPal had grown so much faster than any competitors was that it had offered such generous welcome bonuses and made it extremely easy to join and use its services. But PayPal did not have proper verification and screening processes in place, and it soon became clear that this had created an insane amount of fraud and scams. One PayPal employee admitted, "We would be issuing lines of credit to people that either weren't real people or had stolen someone else's identity. There were people joining with names like Mickey Mouse and somehow managing to get access to lines of credit and make payments. Plus, every single X.com user got sent a checkbook and debit card, despite the fact many of them weren't real people. Fraudsters had also written code that could open large amounts of new accounts in bulk, so they could claim the welcome and referral bonuses over and over again. Not just that, but PayPal was being used by shell companies and people with stolen credit cards. Many believed PayPal made it easier for criminals to funnel money around the world, giving it a bad reputation in the media. Scammers would even use PayPal to accept payments and then simply cash the money out before sending the buyer anything. And thus, PayPal was losing a staggering amount of money in fraud and fees, which meant Elon Musk and Max Levchin were arguing more and more often. Max was worried that the amount of fraud could destroy PayPal, but Elon seemed more preoccupied with his original vision for an all-in-one financial platform. In fact, Elon decided to create a newer version of PayPal called PayPal 2.0 that would offer all kinds of financial services in the future, just like he originally wanted for X.com. He ordered his engineering team to stop adding new features and updates to the original PayPal website and start building PayPal 2.0. Many employees at the company were not happy with this sudden change. While Peter and Max wanted to focus on PayPal as their main service, Elon still wanted to create a digital superbank. The tension was made worse by a crucial software disagreement. Elon wanted to use Microsoft, which X.com's site had been built on, whereas Max wanted Linux, which PayPal was currently built on. Elon reportedly suggested they should decide this huge decision over an arm wrestling contest. The truth was, there were pros and cons for both options, and the company was divided, but ultimately, Elon got his way. The engineers spent months rewriting the code to work for Windows, which many thought was a waste of time where they could have instead been working on new features and improvements. And thus, PayPal 2.0 caused a rift in the company and hurt morale. Meanwhile, costs were spiraling, and the business still didn't have a clear plan to profitability. However, perhaps Elon's most controversial decision, the one that completely soured his relationship with Peter and Max, was to kill the PayPal brand. Elon wanted PayPal to be renamed X-PayPal because he believed PayPal was just one of many services under X.com and shouldn't be the company's main focus. He even ordered that all references to PayPal be removed from the website and that typing in paypal.com would instead redirect users to X.com. Likewise, instead of wearing PayPal merch around the office, Elon handed out X-Rocks, t-shirts, mugs, and frisbees. But a lot of the team believed that their customers preferred the PayPal name to anything X-related. Some outright refused to update the website, saying they'd rather be fired first than kill off their brand. Peter and Max also opposed this decision openly. They argued that PayPal had created brand loyalty, and these changes would risk losing their customers' hard-won trust. However, Elon had already made up his mind. Max Levchin, Peter Thiel, Reid Hoffman, and several other influential team members all reached the same conclusion. Elon Musk needed to be fired as CEO. Thus, for the second time, a group of executives within the company conspired to overthrow their own CEO. However, unlike when Bill Harris was kicked out as CEO by a group of employees revolting, it wouldn't be quite as easy to get rid of Elon. He was the original founder of X.com and still the largest shareholder. So, the rebels met secretly to devise a plan. They agreed they would go to the board together and threaten that unless Elon was immediately removed, they would all resign. And they knew the perfect time to do this, as Elon had planned a vacation to go away with his wife Justine on their honeymoon in September 2000. That way, Elon wouldn't be able to fight back or try to persuade the board members that he should stay. And sure enough, as soon as Elon got on his flight and became unreachable, the rebels used that moment to confront the board. They drafted a vote of no confidence document to present and got signatures from many other PayPal employees who also agreed they'd resign if Elon wasn't removed as leader. Since the board hadn't even been told about some of the big changes Elon was making, that helped convince the board to fire Elon. Of course, when Elon landed and eventually heard about the mutiny, he hurried back from his trip immediately, but it was too late. The board had already made up their mind. And just like at his first company, Zip2, Elon was sidelined again from a company he'd built with his blood, sweat, and tears. Elon was shocked and heartbroken by the betrayal. He'd invested almost all of his own money into X.com and been working crazy hours, but it was no use. Elon said, "This whole thing is making me so sad that words fail me. I have given every last ounce of effort, almost all of my cash from Zip2, and put my marriage on the rocks, and yet I stand accused of bad deeds to which I have not even been given an opportunity to respond." 2 days later, Elon was fired from the company, and Peter Thiel became the new CEO. Peter immediately reversed Elon's controversial decisions. The PayPal 2.0 project was scrapped, the PayPal brand was restored, and X.com's all-in-one financial services idea was put on hold indefinitely. But with Elon kicked out, the company was now more fractured than ever. On the one hand, some of the team agreed that Elon had failed to deal with problems like the high fraud rates and lack of profitability. He was also blamed for the divided team, the 2.0 project, the naming issues, and for focusing too much on his bigger vision at the expense of PayPal's current growth. However, many others felt it was completely unfair he'd been removed, especially in such a controversial way. There's no doubt Elon had the biggest and most ambitious vision for the company out of anyone, and some felt if he'd had more time, he could have pulled it off. So it was like the company had just been through a civil war, and the office mood was tense. Over the next few months, PayPal's users grew faster and faster. By July, PayPal was processing almost $5 million daily. And whilst fraud had been costing the company millions, Max took it as his personal mission to tackle the issue. For example, one of PayPal's problems was that bot accounts were being used to wire money around the world. At the time, there wasn't a universal way to check if it was an actual human opening a new account. So Max created a system where the sign-up page presented the user with a picture. It was a series of letters and numbers with black lines across the image. To the human eye, it was easy to see the characters, but back then, computers couldn't figure it out, so they wouldn't be able to set up new accounts. The idea became the first popular captcha system online, and it soon spread around the internet. But Max's greatest adversary was an anonymous hacker who called himself Igor. Igor opened up countless fake accounts, and every time Max shut down an Igor account, new ones popped up in their place. Igor even wrote to Max, taunting him, saying he'd never be shut down. However, the more time Max spent finding and closing Igor's accounts, the easier it was for him to spot criminal activity. Max realized that most PayPal clients use their accounts in predictable ways. If an account sent money too frequently or in unusually large amounts, it stood out from the normal pattern. So Max wrote programs that flagged and froze suspicious accounts. Using hundreds of variables, its algorithms got better and better at identifying subtle patterns to detect fraud. And ultimately, PayPal's run-in with fraudsters gave it a competitive advantage, as they worked to create complex fraud-fighting tools, essentially becoming one of the first big data security companies. This pushed many fraudsters to attack PayPal's competitors instead. The only problem was that while it solved a lot of fraud, innocent users also sometimes had their money frozen by Max's program. But we'll get to that. For now, PayPal still had an even bigger problem to think about, actually becoming a profitable business. They'd so far been relying on investor money, but that wasn't sustainable forever. Up until this point, PayPal had a freemium model. You could use it completely for free with no transaction fees and just voluntarily upgrade and start paying transaction fees if you wanted some extra features. But eventually PayPal realized this wasn't going to be enough and decided they were going to force users to upgrade and start paying transaction fees. This meant completely backtracking on the promise they'd repeated over and over that PayPal would always be completely free. Some employees internally referred to the forced upgrade as the FU, a recognition that this was the most controversial move PayPal had made. Unsurprisingly, users were furious by the broken promise. One user wrote, "They got us hooked and then started charging. To think I helped promote you, build you up, and then you do this to us? You should be ashamed." The problem for users was that PayPal had wiped out all their competition by initially not having fees. So now, even if users were unhappy, they didn't really have any alternatives. They had to stick with whatever PayPal was charging them if they wanted to keep sending and receiving online payments. It's a classic business trick. Offer something amazing to get market share initially, but then as soon as you have a near monopoly, you can start doing whatever you want. PayPal had lured people in with a great deal, but changed their policy once customers had no real alternative for email payments. Of course, PayPal is not a charity, and so it had to find some way to become profitable. But the fact they'd blatantly broken a promise was a warning sign of the much shadier things PayPal would soon be doing to its customers. By the end of 2001, PayPal was generating a staggering $103.7 million in revenue and had more than 12 million users on its platform, with 20,000 new users signing up every day. After going through so many ups and downs over the years, PayPal was finally profitable, and they now wanted to take the company public on the stock market. This was the exit that everyone had been working so hard to achieve, and on paper, it seemed like the right move. PayPal had survived the potentially disastrous merger with X.com, it had millions of users, it had won the eBay battles, it had cracked down on fraud, and PayPal was finally profitable. But despite all this, the road to IPO was riddled with difficulties. During the lead up to the IPO, several companies filed lawsuits, claiming that PayPal violated patents. The timing was designed to disrupt the IPO and get a quick settlement, but PayPal diligently fought each one. Then, just one day before it went public, the Attorney General of Louisiana claimed PayPal didn't have proper state banking rights to make payments, and it would block PayPal within the state. Meanwhile, the Securities and Exchange Commission accused PayPal of violating the quiet period before IPO. Because of all this, newspapers began running negative news stories about PayPal. It also didn't help that PayPal was the first company to announce an IPO after 9/11, and many also felt the effects of the dot-com bubble were still lingering. Of course, if investors were worried about the bad press, the lawsuits, the state blocks, plus the general nervousness about investing in internet businesses, this could completely ruin PayPal's IPO plans. But on February 15th, 2002, PayPal completed its IPO and was listed on the stock exchange at $13 a share. By the end of the day, PayPal closed at over $20 a share, making it officially a billion-dollar company. All the hard work of Peter and his team over the years had finally paid off. From a failing startup with 6 employees, PayPal had turned into a fully fledged business with over 750 full-time employees. Everyone celebrated, champagne flowed, music played, and people danced on their desks. Within the Palo Alto offices, it felt like PayPal had conquered the world. But nobody in the office knew that just 2 months later, their world would be turned upside down. So far in this video, we've talked a lot about money. But before we get to the next chapter, let's talk about how you can make some money with today's video sponsor, Moomoo. Moomoo is a stock trading platform with 0 commission fees on stocks, ETFs, and options. But remember how PayPal had a welcome bonus for new users back in the day? Well, I think Moomoo has an even better deal for new users. If you just deposit $100, you get 5 random stocks completely for free, and these can be worth anywhere from $2 to $2,000 each. And that's just for making a deposit. You also get up to 8.1% interest on uninvested cash. So this really is an amazing deal for new users. Plus, Moomoo is an award-winning stock trading platform with free financial analysis tools that can help you with your investments. And they support pre-market and post-market trading as well. There's also no subscription fees and no account management fees. So if you want to get started right now and unlock those free stocks, just click the link in the description. By mid-April, word was spreading around the office that Peter had been secretly meeting with the top executives at eBay. And then the rumors started. eBay had agreed to buy PayPal. You see, eBay had tried to beat PayPal for a while, but 75% of eBay auctions accepted PayPal versus only 27% for eBay's own payment service. So eventually, eBay had decided it was easier to just buy PayPal than continue to fight them. And even though PayPal weren't hugely enthusiastic about the idea, it was better than the constant risk of eBay just banning them completely from their platform. So on July 8th, 2002, eBay announced it had acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion in eBay stock. There was a sense of both relief and shock in the PayPal offices. PayPal would now become the official payment system of all eBay auctions. This meant millions more users and no more battles. However, while the news seemed good, to many at PayPal, it marked a significant moment in time. Joining eBay meant joining an established company with rules and guidelines and strict protocols. It meant the death of the vibrant, exciting, thrilling world of a startup. And thus, soon after the announcement, Peter Thiel announced his resignation as the CEO of PayPal. Several other top executives followed, including Max Levchin, the other co-founder of PayPal. In just 4 years, PayPal had survived the dot-com bubble burst, had 2 leadership coups, outsmarted an e-commerce giant, crawled its way to profitability, had a successful IPO, and now negotiated a sale to eBay for $1.5 billion. But now, the original duo who started it all were gone. In fact, following eBay's acquisition, almost all of the original PayPal team members left one by one, going on to start other companies rather than being a part of eBay and its more traditional corporate culture. The entrepreneurial spirit of the company seemed to have been replaced by a stricter, hierarchical culture, where people felt like just another cog in the eBay wheel. Nevertheless, as an eBay subsidiary, PayPal continued to reach new heights. By 2011, it had reached 100 million users and was processing $315 million in payments per day. In fact, PayPal became much bigger than eBay itself and grew far beyond its parent company. And so in 2015, eBay decided to split PayPal into a separate entity once again, so each company could have a sharper focus. As of 2024, PayPal is valued at over $70 billion, around triple the value of eBay. Not bad for a startup that started with Peter Thiel's $100,000 bridge loan. However, despite PayPal's success, Elon Musk feels it massively underachieved what it could have, and still maintains his original X.com vision could have been $1 trillion company. And whilst there's no doubt PayPal has been successful, this is the point we must acknowledge, that its success may be coming to an end. You see, in more recent years, PayPal has become one of the most hated and shady companies, and it's time we look at the dark truth about what PayPal has become. On Trustpilot, PayPal has a shocking 1.3 average rating from around 30,000 reviews. In fact, if you look up PayPal reviews anywhere, from Reddit to YouTube, you'll find an endless amount of people who have been screwed over by PayPal. Just search PayPal horror stories and you'll realize how big of a problem there is with PayPal. Like users talking about how PayPal stole their money, froze their accounts for no reason, lied to them, gave them terrible support, or were just dishonest and rude. One of the biggest issues with PayPal is that it's surprisingly common for someone to have their account shut down for no reason. PayPal then often hold all of their money for up to 180 days with no explanation given. And if you try to contact their support, you'll often be met with awful and unhelpful customer service. People repeatedly talk about how PayPal treat them like criminals when they've done nothing wrong. In fact, I've seen people who used PayPal for their small business, but then without any warning, PayPal just blocked them and seized all their money for 6 months with no reason provided. This has caused people's entire businesses to go under, as they can no longer pay their suppliers or staff. A second big issue is how PayPal's fees have just gotten higher and higher. For a company that gained market share by repeatedly promising to always offer no transaction fees, it's quite amazing how high the fees have now gotten, especially when dealing with payments in other currencies. PayPal was meant to be better than traditional banks, but now it's often not. For example, in the US, Zelle has no fees for instant payment transfers. And in many countries now, the banks themselves offer instant, fee-free money transfers. So it's perhaps not surprising that PayPal's stock price has fallen dramatically. Now, PayPal may try to claim that their service offers more payment protection, but that doesn't really seem true either anymore. You will find hundreds of thousands of people talking about getting scammed while using PayPal, and how PayPal regularly side with the scammers. I saw countless stories where a buyer or seller had provided clear proof they were in the right, but PayPal made no effort to actually figure out the truth. It's like they just couldn't be bothered to waste resources on it. As long as PayPal got their fee, they didn't seem to care. As well as this, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has accused PayPal of all kinds of unethical and illegal practices to rip off customers. This includes signing people up for credit accounts without asking permission, so they got hit with late fees and interest, outright lying about promotions and never fulfilling them, and even just ignoring customer disputes. But just when it seemed like PayPal couldn't get much worse with all the fees, scams, and terrible customer service, it did get worse. In fact, it got pretty dystopian. PayPal updated their policy to say anyone posting misinformation can be fined $2,500. It's a pretty crazy thing to sneak into your policy, that a financial company should even have any involvement in what you say, and then be able to ban you from receiving payments and take your hard-earned money if you say something they don't like or agree with. Even a former PayPal president agreed. He said, "PayPal's new policy goes against everything I believe in. A private company now gets to decide to take your money if you say something they disagree with. Insanity." Elon Musk agreed as well. But of course, by continuing to use PayPal, you were agreeing to this policy and risked being banned and fined. Of course, once all the backlash started, PayPal backtracked and said this policy was just a mistake. However, once the outrage died down, some people pointed out that the penalty for certain violations still seemed to be there. And given PayPal's track record of broken promises, it's definitely hard to fully trust them. Personally, I would not recommend keeping large amounts of money in your PayPal account. I've just heard of so many people who have issues with PayPal, and most of the horror stories I read were people who'd been a customer for years, which is why they were so shocked when PayPal suddenly froze their account and refused to help them. So it's definitely worth considering alternative payment solutions. Like many businesses now use Stripe or Square, and personally I really like Wise.com, which has lower fees than PayPal. They also have a two-sided referral bonus like PayPal used to, so I'll link to them in the description if you want to check them out. But of course, there's many other options too, because thankfully, PayPal's tight grip on the world of online payments is coming to an end. And the less of a stranglehold on online payments PayPal has, the more it might force them to care more about its users again, and return to being the innovative company it once was. Now, given what PayPal has become, it's not surprising that the original team who started building X.com and PayPal all left the company. But what is surprising is what they did next. For many of its earliest employees, PayPal became a crash course in how to build a startup. And thanks to the lessons they learned, PayPal employees went on to be involved in some of the world's biggest tech companies. Engineers Steve Chen, Jawed Karim, and Chad Hurley left PayPal to co-found YouTube. Reid Hoffman, executive vice president at PayPal, founded LinkedIn. Peter Thiel became Facebook's first outside investor. Russell Simmons and Jerry Stoppelman co-founded Yelp. Elon Musk went on to build SpaceX and Tesla, fund OpenAI, and bought Twitter, which finally gave him a reason to reuse the X.com domain name he'd bought. And many more of PayPal's team became investors in prominent startups or became high-level executives at major companies. Either in public or behind the scenes, PayPal's alumni have been involved in almost all major Silicon Valley companies. As a result, Fortune released an article in 2007 that nicknamed the group the PayPal Mafia, a reference to how much influence this small group of former PayPal employees has. Meanwhile for Elon, after he was kicked out of X.com, a couple of years later he started SpaceX and said his new goal was to colonize Mars. But in an interesting turn of events, when SpaceX was on the brink of bankruptcy, it was Peter Thiel's investment company that helped save the business, showing that even after everything, the PayPal Mafia stick together and help each other out. This so-called PayPal Mafia has changed how we shop, how we connect, how we learn, and how we live. However, if you want to know the story about the most interesting tech entrepreneur, you're gonna want to go watch this video about John McAfee. Just trust me on this one, you've never heard a story quite like this. Just click the thumbnail on screen to go watch that video now. I hope you enjoyed the story of PayPal, and I'll see you over in the next video in just a second. Cheers.